And we're back with more Community. Cool. Season 5, Episode 8, App Development and Condiments. I love all the titles this season because they're as clever as ever.
They are. They really are.
It's hilarious. So the Save Greendale Committee is actually discussing adding grass to Greendale's soccer field when Chang asks Jeff what time his dinner is that evening. And then everyone realizes that Jeff didn't invite Shirley to dinner because he knows that she can't make it since Elijah, her son, has karate practice on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. And Shirley starts guilting everyone about making sacrifices and how she doesn't expect anyone to do it for herself, but she's always going to do it for others. Mm-hmm. And Jeff straight up calls her out for manipulating people. And he's like, do you see it? She's doing it with that face right now. Yeah. And she's like, you don't like my face? Oh, everyone feels bad for Shirley. So the dean interrupts this discourse going on to introduce them to some new app designers, David and Bixel, who have a new app they're beta testing called Meow Meow Beans.
Oh, this is one of the best.
Oh, guys. It's great. Essentially, Meow Meow Beans basically lets everyone who uses it rate everyone else who uses it from like a 1 to 5 star rating system. So it's like this whole rating commentary on social media. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can rate each other, rate yourselves. Like anyone can be rated. It's like
students can rate teachers. Teachers can rate students. Yeah.
Anyone and everyone can rate each other. Meow Meow Beans. It's totally ridiculous. And it's a popularity contest basically. Mm-hmm. So the trial starts and Jeff immediately notices the effects on the first day of like the school-wide trial. Garrett is ordering Starburns around with his books. Mm-hmm. And like the whole balance seems off, and even Abed is the one who's explaining to Jeff how the app works and that people have different ratings, and Jeff realizes that people are actually using and buying into this app, and he was like, he thought it was just going to be this thing that everyone wrote off like he did. Yeah. He even sees that Chang is pretending to have a limp because he realized it got him more like stars or it got him a higher rating, and Hickey is pretending that it's his birthday. Because no one's downvote a guy on their birthday, exactly. And if you can't beat him, join him. Yep. So he's even fully into Meow Meow Beans when he was judging it at first. Mm-hmm. Even Britta's using the app because she liked the idea of giving a voice to the unheard. But then Annie shatters everyone's world and informs everyone that rating system is weighted. And the higher your rating is, the more that your rating affects other people. Right. So Britta tries to start a revolution, stands up in her chair in the middle of the cafeteria and fails. And everyone literally starts rating her lower on the app right in front of her, and she sees it happen right before her eyes.
What does she say? You're punishing me for being alive!
That's the general idea, baby.
Letter to Savage. Yeah. It's the best. Always. It's so brutal.
I love that Britta was getting through to Annie with like the
mustard on her face.
Exactly, yeah. So Jeff and Annie actually tell her when she sits back down that earlier in their conversation when she had mustard on her face from a sandwich she was eating, they were more willing to hear what she had to say. Annie say it like deludes or distracts from her
like rough exterior.
Yeah.
Like, does it dilute
your stupid face?
From your stupid butt.
So they're all sitting in the cafeteria, and Shirley walks in, and Jeff sees how immediately popular she is with everyone because Annie tells him that she's nice, and everyone likes her, and she has 4 stars because she's nice to people. And Jeff realizes that Shirley she's nice to everyone, but she's still being manipulative. So he registers and now makes it his mission to become a 5 to contend with her and like make his point. Yeah. So Jeff starts infiltrating various groups and mingling with them to get his score higher. And we see that the 5s, who were, like, now people are being dubbed 5s if you have a 5-star rating. The 5s are starting to overtake the school, and it's becoming this, like, dystopian novel, sort of like Hunger Games.
Future.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. So there's, like, a 4s only above section of the school. Chang, Hickey, Abed, and Shirley are all 5s, and they're aware that the 3s and 2s are becoming suspicious of their power. So Kugler, this other 5, who's this like fun dad-type character who just wants to seem cool to everyone, suggests that they give the public what they need, which is hope, that they too can become a 5. So Shirley decides on a talent show where people can vote fairly and people can rise and fall. And then Annie...
It gives them hope in the system.
Exactly. And then Annie shatters her world and reveals that Jeff Winger has recently become a 4. Big news.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of my favorites. One of the best deliveries of that line ever. And she says it so much. Britta informs Jeff about the talent contest, and she tells him that he needs to enter to dismantle the app and take the system down. And Jeff basically decides to enter, but we end up seeing that it's for his own selfish reasons instead. So right before he's going to go on to the talent show, the dean warns him this could be social suicide. But Jeff goes on anyway and performs a stand-up routine basically about the new rating system, and he slays. His big thing.
So perfect.
Yeah, it's so great. He starts from the 1s, goes to the 2s, all the rating system. His big thing is what's with 2s and apples. You get a choice between 2 fruits, Mix it up. So everyone's cracking up during his routine. He's killing it. Shirley's ready to downvote him, but you know what? The Coug approves. And everyone votes him up and he becomes a 5.
That whole scene is so, like, spot on for what stand-up comedy is now.
It is, right?
He walks around and goes, shit.
Exactly. He sits on his seat. It's hilarious.
He's killing it.
Yeah, this episode is so good. It's another one that you have to watch to truly understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So Jeff becomes a 5, and Britta's really disappointed in him because he didn't do what he said he was going to do, and her mission still is left unfinished.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff is now a 5, and he and Shirley keep trying to undermine each other in the 5s like a little sanctuary tent while they're doing their fancy future dance.
Just like weird, like, I don't even know what
movements.
Fancy inaugural future dance.
It's so bizarre. I don't even know how they came up with this concept.
Right.
And Britta's running around the school. She's not able to get through to anyone as she tries to destroy the system that is Meow Meow Beans. So she smears some mustard on her face, and everyone finally starts to listen to her, and their words, resonate.
You're all alive!
Exactly. Look at the mustard on my face, but listen to my words. It's beautiful. So Jeff and Shirley are full-on arguing in front of all the other 5s now, and everyone else downvotes both of them and kicks them out because they see what jerks they actually are.
Yeah.
They're not actually so nice, and Britta's revolution has taken over the school. So Jeff and Shirley are banished to the Outer Lands, and they have it out with each other. Jeff says he didn't invite Shirley because he knew she wouldn't be able to make it to the dinner, and Shirley tells him that it's nice to be invited anyway. So they both basically admit that they love being in control, and that's what caused them to act how they did, and they apologize to each other and have a really nice moment. And then Starburns comes out in a ridiculous... He's basically naked.
He's basically naked, wearing, like, a belt of bullets.
Yeah.
And,
he's got his
a
mustache
Speedo.
or his beard shaved.
Yes! His
It's
hair's
so-
in a ponytail.
I love it so much. But he says that they're allowed to come back in by decree of Britta, the mother of ones.
Yeah.
Yes!
So they go back in, and they see Britta is basically absolving everyone of their 5 filth.
Yeah.
And
Reduced
reducing
to
them.
oneness.
Exactly. And Jeff and Shirley realize how out of control this has gotten now, and they decide that they have to be the ones to end this, because now that Britta's in charge and controlling the school, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Where have we gotten? So Jeff gets in front of the crowd again and reveals that Meow Meow Beans beta testing ended days ago, and it's now available to purchase in the App Store, and it has a rating of 5 stars.
Nice.
So like what does Jeff say? It exempts itself from being rated, but
But it rates us, yet exempts itself from being rated.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's this whole thing. He shocks everyone's world, and he says in order to truly purge, they have to delete the app. And also, it's a Saturday, and they're all on campus,
You guys
for
are
no
all here
reason.
For no reason.
So the next day, Jeff asks Shirley to dinner, and she says that she can't go, but he suggests that they get takeout and they eat in the study room, and she says that's nice. And Jeff and Shirley are able to get past their conflict again, and then our end tag is like a 1980s style party movie starring Coogler.
Oh my God, Coogler! Oh my God, it's a really
It's
good
hilarious.
one too.
They really go for it with this
Yeah,
one. I
me
really
too.
like it.
Yeah.
It's very silly, and it's based off a side character that's introduced in this episode, and they run wild
And
with
we
it.
see him
It's
a couple
totally
more
hilarious.
times throughout the rest of the series.
Series, exactly.
But yeah, the Coug approves.
Yeah,
That's
one
one
of
of
the
my
best.
faves.
I love it so much. This is a great episode. I know you love this
actually
one.
Wrote the pilot for Arrested Development.
Yes, yeah. That's
He
him.
did?
That's him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Coogler.
that's that guy.
Oh my God, that's badass.
Yeah.
You're so right though. Like for
I
me,
think
you're like, I hope
there
that's
might be
right.
another white dude with kind of curly
Yeah.
hair. There's a lot
really
to be
hope
fair,
that.
Hollywood.
But this is a really fun episode. For me, it's one of my favorite episodes. Again, it's exploring this whole new concept that I really appreciate. And I just I have so much fun because they really go off with it.
Yep.
Mm.
And I think it's a really good really good glimpse into Jeff and Shirley's friendship again, because we we see it sometimes, but we don't see it enough. I don't think we saw it a lot in season 4, so I like that we're getting another glimpse into that and a glimpse into how similar they both still
really
are.
are.
They both love control. They both don't like to be excluded from things going on within the group now, and the fact that Jeff didn't invite Shirley really hurt her feelings. That's what started all of this anyway, was Jeff being inconsiderate and having to own up to that.
And then Shirley finding power in something and then wanting to go crazy with
it.
And like you said, it just points out all of their similarities, the parallels that there are between them. And then also just seeing how the whole rest of the school is willing to just take this concept and then go
run wild with it. It's ridiculous. Oh my god! And just like become these slaves to an app. It's absurd. And then for Britta to be the one to wake them all up.
And I think that's hilarious because it's just like it's Britta's constantly trying to go back to those roots. And be and
I like that they're doing that this season.
You're so right, exactly. I feel like it's a perfect season to do it with Repilot. It's like this is her time to finally be that activist and be that person that she like wants to be. And I just think it's hilarious that she has to do it with mustard on her face.
Yes, it's an iconic, because even when she's talking to everyone and reducing everyone to their 5 filth, it's even more exaggerated. Like it takes up like half of her cheek on her face. It's hilarious.
It's all the way across. Yeah. And they have like posters all over the school that are like in Che like fashion. I can't remember. Che Guevara. Yeah. And like, you know, she's become this like huge like figure for the cause, basically. And I just think it's really funny. They give Britta a huge chance to shine in this, and Britta also wants this. Like Britta thrives off of being this person. Like she's actually pretty devastated when Jeff comes to destroy Meow Meow Beans and make everybody on sale. She's like, wait, you know,
to come back. She starts smearing more mustard on her face.
Yes. Well, this make you stay. How do you feel about the episode?
I like it. I think it's a really fun episode. I like it's like a commentary of like, this is kind of what social media is, and it's becoming, and it's really just about rating and kind of just glorifying each other and making each other feel valuable via the internet. And it's a real good way to talk about it because it's childish. This is fucking childish. I'm glad it's called Meow Meow Beans.
Yeah.
And like the creators are like 2 like functioning fucking children who can code.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It honestly feels like this. Like these fucking children on a computer like change the world in a way that's irreparable. And like I like Hickey in the beginning of this episode. He's like, I fought for this shit. I know you can't think what I fight and believe in. Yeah. But stuff like this, and the dude's like, I have to go poo now. And he has a timer on his phone to remind him when to poo. And Hickey's just like, like, I get that. I get it. Like, this is horrible. This whole situation that is reality is just, see what's become of it. It's not about Greendale. It's like, it's not about any natural order. It's about like this artificial like value that we assign to each other that isn't inherently there. All of a sudden, Garrett's more of a badass than Starburns.
Right?
Get the fuck out. Starburns literally died
yeah.
in that explosion.
You're
and I'm pretty
me,
sure Garrett got winded getting his Dungeons and Dragons book to bring it to Pierce.
Yeah.
So it's like, but that's it. It's only because of an assigned value that's perceived by an audience, not because of any truth. And I think this episode plays with, honestly, that's what social media is. It's just like money. We made it up and we think it's important.
Right.
Therefore it is. But it also
that.
Doesn't mean that it is definitively.
And just quickly, I don't want to stay too long on it, but on your point, like you said, it's just this reality that we make up. That's exactly what social media is. So it's like Chang is limping, it's Hickey's birthday, it's like all of these things that we see where people respond to, we're just putting more of that out there.
Exactly.
It's your friend's birthday wish to make him a wish.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I think it's a really fun like deconstruction of that. And again, just giving us more ways to get to know these new characters and to get to know how our old characters have changed.
See how far everyone's willing to go. And so season 5, episode 9, VCR maintenance and educational publishing. Another good one. So the Save Greendale Committee is discussing what else they need to get done at their meeting. And Annie mentions that the East Hall storage room needs to be cleaned. And Jeff actually volunteers because he realizes that Annie always goes from easy to hardest with her chores. So then Shirley and Hickey jump on that too. And Annie kind of punishes them because she doesn't like that Jeff's figured out what she's doing. But they still ended up volunteering to do that anyway. So and then Abed and Rachel, we get Brie Larson again, walk in and announce it's their year anniversary because their relationship is more efficient. So like dating for a couple months to them is like dating for a year. It's awesome. So Rachel got him the interactive VCR game Pile of Bullets for their anniversary.
From the 90s.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So they're going to have dinner at their apartment that night. Annie and Abed are, and Rachel's coming over. And Annie's brother is also coming over, and they're going to have buttered noodles.
Reluctantly.
Yes. And then the dean interrupts and wants to inform Jeff and Hickey that payday is postponed, but don't worry because he has a freestyle rap apology.
Oh, it's one of the best.
And he's dressed as a payday
bar. And he's dressed as
a
full payday candy bar, and it's one of the best Dean scenes.
He's a peanut bar, and he's here to say...
Your checks will arrive on another day.
If you can just go... Most of it. I know, so do I. Like, if you can go and look that up, it's worth watching. It's hilarious. It's one of the best.
The Dean peanut rap, and I promise you'll find it.
One of the best things you'll ever see on the internet.
And then he doesn't know what he's done.
What happened to him? I don't know what that was. So then we go into our intro, and after that, Annie and Abed are at their apartment, and Annie's brother, Anthony, is helping her make dinner. She's trying to bond with him and finds out how handy he is around the house helping fix things. He fixes their fridge for them. And Annie tries to convince Abed to let Anthony move in because they can't afford to keep splitting the rent 2 ways. Mm-hmm. And then Abed's like, well, what about Rachel? And they can't really agree and then decide to drop it before Rachel comes over because Abed needs to practice his smiling.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love. So Jeff, Shirley, and Hickey are cleaning the East Hall storage room when Jeff discovers a vent filled with brand new stacks of chemistry books. Mm-hmm. Hickey says they've got to be worth at least $200 each. And they're mint. Yeah, mint. And they're probably stolen. Yep. Jeff and Hickey suggest that they sell them, and Shirley kind of resists at first because she thinks that this isn't what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. She's a Christian woman.
Exactly, yeah. But then Hickey says, in my experience, when God wants you to do something, he drops it on you like a ton of books. So they convince Shirley because they, tell her that the money could probably really help her out too. So back at the dinner with Annie and Abed, it becomes really awkward because they're trying to sell each other on why their choice would be a better roommate in front of Rachel and Anthony.
Yes.
Like the world's most awkward dinner.
Yeah, Brie Larson literally asks, "Are we being bugged by the feds?"
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like a great commentary.
Subtle conversation I've ever sat in.
Yep. So they actually end up excusing themselves so they can try to discuss their problem in private, only to decide that the winner of a game of Pile of Bullets will get to have their person move in. Mm-hmm. And they haven't asked either of their people if they want to move in, if that's even something that they want to do. This is just Annie and Abed.
This is very Annie and Abed fashion.
Love it. So Jeff, Shirley, and Hickey end up meeting up with Britta because she knows someone who can buy the books. She knows a guy. So the four of them kind of start to argue about a shared profit when Chang walks in and interrupts them with a bong.
With a bong! Thank
you.
I was like, smoke. We can't forget that.
Yes. Chang! It's hilarious. So he's like, you know what? There's something shady going on here, and that's totally fine. You guys, I don't know anything. You just let me go. And Shirley says they can't let him go. So Jeff grabs him, and they tie him up. They actually tie him up, and they force him into making a video where he admits he stole the textbook as blackmail to use against him. Yeah, I love them so much. He kisses them. It's ridiculous. And Jeff actually starts to think they've gone too far, and he wants to leave. He wants out. And Hickey tackles him and ties him up with Chang. Mm-hmm. So now 2 people are tied up. Great. Mm-hmm. So Annie, Abed, Rachel, and Anthony are playing Pile of Bullets, which proves to be highly confusing. Annie and Abed are really the only ones who are into it, and they're playing very intensely, while Anthony and Rachel just try their best, and they don't really care what's happening.
They don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, they're like, why does this even matter?
Game ever.
Yeah, and they're like, why does this matter? Let's just do something else, something that's actually fun. And Annie and Abed are like, no, we have to do this because this decides who gets to move in here. And then that whole thing comes out, and Rachel's like, excuse me? Like, that's not anything that should make someone want to live here.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're both Rachel's really offended, and she says she never agreed to that in the first place. She was never asked, and she leaves. Annie's brother's like, I don't know how relationships work, but I don't think you have a girlfriend anymore.
Burn.
And then back at the school, Britta is talking about meeting with her contact to set up getting a price to do the exchange. Mm-hmm. And Jeff, while tied to Chang, starts to manipulate the situation a little bit. Mm-hmm. And he gets in both Hickey and Shirley's heads about Britta leaving to set up a deal and cut them out. Mm-hmm. So Jeff and Chang, kind of bounce off each other, and their plan works. And Shirley doesn't only end up tying up Britta, she also ties up Hickey. And she just decides to make the deal by herself and get the entire profit, like an absolute
because she can't
savage.
Trust anybody, so she's just going to do it herself.
Why not? So then it's actually the next day at Annie and Abed's apartment, and Annie sees her brother Anthony packing earlier than expected and asks if it was about last night. And he's like, yeah, definitely. He's like, there's clearly some unresolved issues going on here. And Annie starts apologizing and admits to being hurt by their mom, kind of giving up on her when she went to rehab and harboring some resentment towards Anthony when he sided with her mom. And Anthony's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I was talking about unresolved issues with the black guy and all those pictures around your apartment.
That's one of my faces. Oh, no. I was actually talking about, like, there is something weird
clearly
going on
wrong here. What were you talking about? He's like, screw you, I was 13.
Yeah.
About the whole mom situation. But I think he actually says that Troy, like, left a vacuum at the apartment. Yeah. So when they're at school, we see Abed apologizing to Rachel in, like, a typical movie-style fashion. Mm-hmm. He gets Pablo to help him with, like, a whole, like, rain scene system and a rainbow
outside
and
of
everything.
Her locker.
Yep. And he basically admits to her that he sped things up because he was afraid of not passing a lot of the, like, relationship tests, and he knew that having Annie around would have probably helped him. And Rachel says that he's not failing anything, and she forgives him, and they have their really sweet, like, moment where they get back together. And Shirley meets with Britta's buyer to sell the textbooks, and he looks through one of them and informs her that they're misprints, and none of them have any page numbers, and they're worth about $20 each.
For recycling.
Yep. So Shirley has to walk all the way back to the storage room with her tail between her legs and untie all of her friends that she just betrayed. No big deal. So in the study room, Annie and Abed are actually talking about Troy and discussing that he kept the peace, and they're starting to go a little crazy without having him around, and they have to address what his loss means for them, and they decide that maybe they should live with, like, a therapist or at least someone crazier than them. And right as they say that, Britta walks into the study room.
Yes, thank you.
And then they look at each other, Annie and Abed, and they're like, let's just Craigslist. Craigslist sounds good.
Yeah.
So then Shirley, Hickey, and Jeff all come in, and Annie notices that all of them are wearing the same clothes from yesterday, and they reveal they've been at the school the entire night. Hickey admits they've been through some stuff and doesn't really want to discuss it. And Shirley tries to say that they learned a lesson, and everyone's like, what lesson did we learn? And she says sometimes that there isn't a lesson. Like, that's some bullshit. That. And then everyone starts to talk about, what they did with their day. Abed's like, I learned how to smile. And then we
pile of bullets.
Exactly, we play pile of bullets. And then we pan to the dean who's sitting at a desk, and he's working on his freestyle rap now, and he's trying to rework it, and he can't get it. And he's like, I lost it. And then we get a really great end tag in 1993 with the guy who stars in Pile of Bullets getting the phone call to be in Pile of Bullets, and his wife convinces him to do it. He works at Apple, and they only offer their, employees stock, and that's bullshit. Apple Computers is nothing. Yeah, so she's like, Pile of Bullets.
This is the new big thing. She literally drops the plates, and she's like, this is it.
We're going to Hollywood.
What does she say? She's like,
You're the new Luke Skywalker for the new Star Wars.
Yep.
That's exactly what she says, yeah.
Literally what
she
says.
For Pile of Bullets. It's hilarious.
She's really quick. She also says, she's like, how you said we wanted to try cocaine? I think
we
should try to buy some because we can afford it. It's so great.
It's funny.
This one is there's a lot going on in
there's
this one.
There's a really funny story with, like, Shirley and everyone, but then I think, like, the stuff with Annie and Abed addressing Troy not being in their lives anymore, I think that's a really, really, focus, that's a great story that's happening, because they're both, like, literally just feeding off of each other and getting more and more intense as the episode goes on.
And they really do feed off of each other. They mentioned, like, during the episode where Annie broke the DVD or the Blu-ray, the Batman thing.
You read my mind.
Troy literally was like, you were supposed to calm us down. And it's just like, Annie is another one of those crazy, like, 10 out of 10 characters. And without Troy actually being there to help diffuse and, like, take that role of being like, no, I'm the crazy one. You guys need to help me. Or, like, doing my wackiness and my zaniness. Like, without someone there to be their buffer or to, like, help kind of make it so that there's kind of, like, this balance between three people, they really go out of whack. Because they're like, no, I want someone who will help my situation. The other person's like, no, I want someone who will help me, because they both feel a very unique vacuum. They don't feel the same vacuum, because Abed was best friends with Troy, and Annie had, like, an extended relationship with Troy for, like, at the longest of anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
So they both got something different from Troy, and then when there's a vacuum, they both try filling what they need, but it's not the same thing.
And to me, and on that point, to me, it's like Abed and Annie are like wildfire. It's like they both go so crazy with what they believe, with how they think, with what they feel, and they go for it. And Troy was a good buffer to be like, okay, but we can't get too crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
They were both planning to talk about their respective people moving in before they like addressed it. They were both like, well, we thought.
They both brought it to. They both had it, and they were like, well, I was thinking this, and he's like, well, I was thinking that, and then it just blows up, and then they have no one being a voice of reason, and it just snowballs into we're playing this whole game and we're forcing you guys to move in with us because we're going to figure out who's the winner from this, and that's going to be, and it's like, you guys haven't even considered how anybody else feels about this. And I think I really appreciate the consistent Abed-Annie pairings, but in still using them to pull growth out of each other, to show that when they're paired together, they bring out a lot of each other's negative qualities.
Exactly, yeah, because they're both very, like, I think, not very, but they're both inherently a little bit selfish.
Yeah. Or they at least both can be when they're distracted and they're not thinking, because I think,
and they want something that they really want, because they feel like it's going to benefit the entire situation. That's what it ultimately is. Annie's like, having Anthony here will benefit us both, and Abed's like, well, having Rachel here will also benefit us both. So they both think that they're going to be helping the other person,
and also helping themselves. And so
at the same time,
and like we all said, it's like it's a tender moment that happens between them in a really fun way. The whole side story that's going on with the books thing is really just a fun...
It's just silly fun, yeah.
Exactly. It's more character development in the fact that we're seeing these characters again with Hickey thrown in, now Chang also being thrown in, and kind of seeing them devolve into this madness.
Yeah.
And the fun twist of it actually being Shirley who's the villain and having to understand the wrong of her ways. I appreciate that. But yeah, it definitely feels secondary to what's most important is like Annie and Abed really having to address that, like, Troy's absence is affecting their living situation.
Dynamic. Just the two of them being in the apartment now.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll go into season 5, episode 10, a wonderful one, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
It returns, you guys.
It's
I have
back.
To say, like, the fact that it's back means the world to me, because everybody knows it's my favorite episode.
Yep.
And it comes back, and it's back and better than ever.
I love that they actually revisit Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. So the Save Greendale Committee is discussing insurance for the school when Hickey gets notified that he's not invited to his grandson's birthday party. He tells the group that he doesn't get along with this son, who is not his gay son. This is another son,
He understands
Hank.
his gay son.
Yeah, he gets that one. That's fine. But Hank, he doesn't understand because, all he does is hoard his grandson, and they don't connect because all he wants to do is play that, what's that thing, the Dungeons and the Dragons.
You mean Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, that's the one. It's so funny. So Annie immediately jumps on it, and she says, they play D&D, and they should play a game to help Hickey reconnect with his son. And everyone's kind of jumping on it, and Abed reminds everyone that didn't last time they tried to use D&D to, like, reprogram someone's brain, they almost caused a suicide?
Yeah.
Jeff's like, what do you mean? Fabulous Neil. He's still out there in the background doing this and that.
And he's literally
in the background of the shot. It's
doing this or that.
It's hilarious. Like, he says hi to someone. He's literally just standing there. It's so funny. And Jeff is like, yeah, and we helped him. So everyone decides, okay, we're in to help Hickey. Yeah. And then we pan out and reveal that, oh, even the dean's in the room, and he is accidentally invited, kind of like Chang was in the first one, to be a part of everything just because he was there.
Yep.
He's like, well, didn't he say, like, I wasn't expecting it, but I think I can, make the time.
Yeah.
So we go and we have our credit sequence, and they do, like, the Dungeons and Dragons style, credit sequence again.
Yeah.
So Abed has devised a game to bring Hickey and his son Hank, who's played by David Cross, really great guest star. Yep,
nice.
Hilarious, to basically bring he and his son closer together. But as everyone starts introducing themselves, Hank catches on to their plan immediately, and he takes everyone's character sheets and he mixes them all up. So Hank is Tristram Steelheart, the cleric. Hickey is Tiny Nuggins, the thief. Britta is Fibrosis, the ranger. Shirley's Crouton, the druid. Annie is Hector, the well-endowed again. Somehow, again. And Chang is Dingleberry, the troll, while Jeff is Sir Riggs Diehard, and the dean is ever so excited to be the son of Sir Riggs Diehard, Joseph Gordon Diehard. Incredible. And their mission is to find the evil necromancer at the Black Tower and slay him. So Abed starts the game, and Hank immediately refuses to go along with everyone, even though, everyone's trying to include him. Annie has her character go and, pick him up and throw him in the air, and he basically sets a bridge on fire because he's so determined. Yep, and he's so determined to just make this shit. So there's conflict immediately because Hickey calls Hank out for ruining the game on purpose, and they have an argument over his son, and Hickey tells him they can't hoard his grandson, and Jeff tries to intervene and help them salvage their relationship by talking about his own daddy issues, and Abed interrupts all of them by continuing the game and reminding them that the bridge is, falling, and they're all falling off the bridge.
They're separate.
Exactly, they're separate. So Hank, Britta, Chang, and Dean Pelton are in one room, and Hickey, Jeff, Shirley, and Annie are left in the living room.
And as, the dean is yanked away from Jeff, he goes, Father, I will find you!
He's so dramatic, and there's, all this, Lord of the Rings style kind of music playing in the background. And then Hickey and Hank make a bet, so if Hickey wins, then he gets to see his grandson or whatever, and then if Hank wins, then Hickey doesn't go to Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yeah.
And the real game begins. So Jeff, Annie, Shirley, and Hickey encounter a group of hobgoblins, and because Hickey doesn't want to rest in the game, he wants to keep moving on. They end up losing Shirley in a fight because Hickey doesn't understand how to actually play the game, and Abed tells Hickey he needs to start taking the game more seriously like his son if he wants to fucking win.
Yeah.
So Abed goes into the other room where Hank's party is, and he's revealing to everyone in there that his attitude towards his dad stems from neglect, and Abed tells him they've been surrounded by sky spiders, and Hank, as Tristram Steelheart, speaks with them, and he earns the spiders' trust and his teammates' trust as well, and the sky spiders agree to fly them as far as their complex religion allows. So Hickey has kind of gotten a hold of how to play the game. He, Annie, and Jeff are raiding some hobgoblins, and they're about to capture 2 for information. And Hickey says, this one's for Crouton, and dedicates it to Shirley. I think that's really sweet.
Yeah.
So Hickey has this whole thing where he's literally interrogating 2 hobgoblins.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Who are both played by Abed, with Annie watching him. It's so hilarious. Yeah. And he's going back and forth, pitting them against each other, and they find out where the Black Tower is from the hobgoblins. So Hank and his group are bonding over a war hymn that he's singing.
Oh, it's so good.
It's hilarious. And all while he's doing that, we see Dean Pelton is desperately trying to get a message to Jeff, and he's repeatedly failing. He never gets the dice roll that he needs. He keeps ripping off pieces of his shirt to tie to a note.
Until he has one half of a crop top.
Exactly. And he finally gets the dice roll he needs, so Abed is able to bring his message to Jeff.
Deliver it to him.
Yep, instructing him that he needs to rub the hilt of his sword. So Jeff does, because, as father and son in the game, they have the sword that's broken in half, and when Jeff rubs the hilt of his sword, a beam of light appears, and the swords are connected, and they're able to see where each other are in the game, and the groups are basically equal distance from the tower and will be arriving at the same time. Jeff and Annie kind of want to call things off. They're getting really serious, but Hickey tells them that Hank probably got to their friends and he's brainwashed them.
Yeah.
And he's proven right when both groups appear, and Britta and Chang are telling everyone to stand down and let Hank win.
Or do you want to get red?
Exactly. And the dean switches sides because he says he's only here to hug his father. So he keeps trying to hug Jeff. Hickey's like, he's got poison in his pockets. Or no, he's got gunpowder in his pockets. Yeah. Don't hug him. The dean's like, I hug my father. Jeff doesn't want him to hug, and the dean ends up getting stabbed by Jeff's sword.
Yeah.
And that sets everything off. Britta yells, Sunslayer! And everyone starts to fight their bloody fight against each other. Exactly. So many great things are said. I think, Hank goes, demonic eye look.
Yes, I guess. Demonic eye look.
Annie, as Hector the Well-Endowed, is like, I spray all over them. It's hilarious. Jeff holds Britta's face in a puddle.
Yes.
Eventually, only Hickey and his son are the last 2 fighting outside the Black Tower, arguing over who's going to get to kill the necromancer, and they find out he ends up escaping because they spent too much time arguing, and Abed says you can still catch him if you guys work together.
Yep.
So they decide to actually start working together to finish the game, and Jeff and the others sneak out to go get some frozen yogurt, feeling content that at least they want to be in the same room as each other, even though they're arguing. They realize that they kind of enjoy being around each other, and their mission is accomplished. And the dean says he's proud of Jeff and puts his arm around him, and Jeff's like, does anyone know where he can get a real sword? And the dean's like, oh, Jeffrey. And then we get a great end tag, and Abed is playing some D&D with all of Annie's stuffed animals. And just when you think that's crazy, Annie comes out and she says, Abed, are you almost done? Because I can't sleep without my stuffed animals. Or Abed finishes his game and actually just walks out of the room, doesn't even give Annie, doesn't even give Annie back her stuffies that he took from her.
No, he just gets up and walks away to his room like
so rude. And his little tidy whities.
I know, I love that so much. So fun. I love the return of...
Yeah.
Exactly, it is jam-packed. I love the return of Dungeons & Dragons. I love the new lineup. I love that the Dean is a part of it.
Yes, it's even better with the Dean a part of it.
Yeah, and I love that since they've already done it once, they go in full force. There's ready. No resistance. Even Jeff's like, I don't want to be here, but I'm here. And
exactly, I'm going for it.
Yeah, he fully says that he holds Britta's face in a puddle.
That's one of my favorites.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate them giving layers to Hickey. Find out about his other son. They explore these kind of toxic male relationships between their fathers.
Absolutely.
And kind of explore that. And I like that the resolution is something that seems very attainable.
Yeah.
It's
not
they're not
magic.
Best friends. They didn't solve all of their problems and everything is great. It's like Jeff said, this is the best that we can ask for right now. Mm-hmm. And we have to let them play it out because this is the most that they can do to be in the same room as each other. And right now that's where we start, you know? So I really liked that. And again, it just is it's so fun. It's so homage heavy. They just go for the bit so hard.
Yeah, when characters die, there's eagles screeching. There's so much good stuff, and it's really good to just see this family still coming together and wanting to be there for their new friends. Yeah, exactly. Hickey's this new person in our group, and he's this new person in our group. He's important to us. Let's show him that by helping him reconnect with his son. Because what else would we do?
Exactly. And they always meddle and get involved in other people's lives, but it's genuinely because they care.
Exactly.
But I think that one's just very heavy in the breakdown of Hickey's character.
Yes, we got a lot more insight to him. Season 5, episode 11, G.I. Jeff.
Yeah, it's a fun
one.
Fantastic. Hilarious. From the get-go, this is an homage episode because it's all basically in cartoon.
Fully animated.
Yeah.
It's
from the beginning.
In the exact style of G.I. Joe. They use the exact same character models and even background art and locations. They just use G.I. Joe animation.
That makes me so happy to know that. So the Save Greendale Committee are all in an episode of G.I. Joe with Jeff as their leader of their little squad wingman. Mm-hmm. Annie is Tight Ship. Shirley is 3 Kids. And Britta is Buzzkill. Yes. Which is the best.
So fun.
So they're fighting Destro and his Cobra attack force with Commander Flint when Jeff appears. And he's trying to show everyone how it's done because his squad is embarrassing him. And while he's trying to show off, he accidentally kills Destro. And everyone is watching in horror. They can't believe what happened because no one's ever actually died
in G.I. Joe.
That's not what happens in a children's TV show. Yep. It's a very
and
adult
Jeff celebrates it too. He's like, we did it!
Yeah, yay,
the children's TV show happens where he's like, I'll get you, G.I. Joe, and he's falling his parachute, and it's yeah, the bad guy got beat. And Jeff's like, wait, no, he's still floating. I can shoot him right here.
Let me get him right now. And he nails him. He annihilates him. So... Wingman, Tight Ship, Buzzkill, and 3 Kids have to face a disciplinary committee where they're charged with mature actions unbecoming of a Joe. So Jeff, or Wingman, is trying to argue their case, insisting that killing is sometimes necessary, especially when dealing with evil organizations, and that if they don't start killing Cobra, they may as well start killing themselves.
Jeez.
And he feels like he's made this really compelling argument, and his speech actually failed, and they're thrown into jail. And that's actually where they end up meeting and getting reunited with Abed, who is Fourth Wall.
Yep. Fourth Wall is so good.
The best. He hints at a higher reality, and he says that they're simply in a syndicated children's cartoon, and reveals that he recently went on a Cobra mission where they infiltrated an excavation operation codenamed Greendale.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And upon hearing this name, Jeff recognizes it, and when Fourth Wall shows him an action figure he found at Greendale, Wingman passes out.
Yeah.
He totally collapses. So he wakes up and Fourth Wall tells him that he has a connection with this Greendale place. And then the cartoon characters start speaking to Wingman like he's Jeff. And it's this really interesting moment because it's Tight Ship or Annie, and she's like, Jeff, can you hear us? What's wrong? And she's talking about how he's having an attack, exactly. And he's like, who's Jeff? I'm Wingman. And it's this weird little moment. And then we go over to where the Cobra commander is eulogizing Destro, and he admits that he loved him, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear?
It's so good.
It's hilarious. And then the Vice Cobra Assistant Commander, Dean Pelton, basically tells the Cobra Commander about this weird energy radiating off the Greendale site, and the commander doesn't care and wants to get revenge on G.I. Joe. So the Cobra forces start to attack the jail that Wingman and everyone else is locked up in. They're trying to find a way to get out when a hole is blasted in their cell wall that sets them free. While they're escaping, they steal some guns so they can lay down suppressive fire to help the Joes. But Wingman accidentally, again, kills a bunch of guys. Plus Lifeline, the Joe's medic.
Yeah.
So he just becomes a savage, and then now they're branded traitors, and they have to flee, and everyone's laying down suppressive fire on them. And they get in the brand new G.I. Joe submachopter that Wingman's piloting, and he's just wondering why he can't be a good Joe and what's wrong with him. And then he hears the word Greendale again, and he passes out. So we see like another kids commercial with G.I. Joe action figures, and it's actually about Wingman and his friends as the G.I. Joe mutineers. And then we get like literally a second flash of like Hickey, Annie, everyone around, like looking over at someone. Yeah. Like a really brief flash of that. Yeah. And then Wingman wakes up and brings up his visions, says he wants to go to Greendale. So they fly there and break in to find an old but familiar looking building that Wingman says fills him with a sense of endless hours for unfair wages. In the office of Vice Assistant Cobra Commander, we see that Overkill is there, and that's Chang. Yeah. And we have Major Dick, who's Hickey, and then Zim Zam, Professor Duncan. Yes. They inform the dean that they're being infiltrated. So the vice assistant, he sends them to deal with the Cobra mutineers, but they kind of take themselves out, and Wingman takes them all out very easily, so they're all defeated. Mm-hmm. And his squad makes it to the study room. All of Jeff's memories come flooding back to him. He goes to his office as, you know, his little G.I. Joe, and he finds a driver's license. So Wingman returns to his squad in the study room to inform them that in real life, Jeff Winger drank a bottle of scotch and took some youth pills because he couldn't handle turning 40. Yep. Really sad, actually.
Yeah, it is.
So Fourth Wall says he's figured out how to get back to reality because this may be Jeff's delusion, but he's still the one on the ball. Let me just remind you. And Wingman says he doesn't want to go back. He prefers this cartoon fantasy over the reality where he's just a middle-aged teacher at community college. So the Cobra Commander team and the G.I. Joes have joined forces, forming the team Jobra.
Yes!
And they want to take Wingman into custody. They capture him, but he convinces them that he wants to stay with them and be a cartoon forever like they are because it's easier and it's a better life. Mm-hmm. So they agree, and then they start to ask him about things he's experienced in the real world, like women's boobs.
It's so true.
And then Jeff realizes that they've never seen women's boobs. Exactly. Wait a second. Hold on. And he realizes he can't indulge in all of like the adult pleasures that come with being, you know, in reality and in real life. In this fantasy, and he realizes he has to escape. He fights the Jobras, puts on his flight pack so he can like burst through the barrier that's separating realities.
Right, reality from his delusion.
It's so high concept, and I love that it's happening to Jeff. So then real Jeff actually wakes up. He's in a hospital bed with all of his friends around him. He admits his age and to everyone and confesses that's why he did what he did, and everyone basically tells him they already knew that he kind of had to be 40, and that's no reason to go and do something as drastic as this over. And they have a group hug and tell Jeff that they're there for him no matter what. And then we get a fun end tag, and it's kids spray painting, and Buzzkill tries to stop them and teach them a lesson, but Fourth Wall interrupts her lesson to teach a different lesson, and he says that, you know, don't be, you know, too
so
overkill.
Heavy-handed with your morals.
Because knowing is half the battle, and that's like the G.I. Joe catchphrase, right? Yeah.
And knowledge is half the battle.
Yes.
Because they do a G.I. Joe bit.
And that's awesome.
G.I. Joe, they do a PSA for the kids.
At the end, that's so cool. So it's full-on homage to G.I. Joe cartoons.
Head to toe, yeah. The only time we really break out of that is when Jeff is broken out of that delusion.
Himself at the very end,
Such a good episode. Like, the references, like Stone said, it's so spot on. The way it's shot, the characters they feature, the tropes that they even follow. Right. It's really great. Like, and then, I mean, even Britta makes a comment of, like, Annie's outfit and her boots are on. She's in these short shorts.
This is a big Jeff episode. Yeah. You know, he freaks out so much about his age that he literally, like, ODs and goes into like a separate reality where he doesn't have to deal with the fact where he's in a children's cartoon. He's a child.
Yeah. And I love that it's Pierce that sets him off into this, because Pierce like literally figured out his birthday, figured out, no, I know what your real age is, Jeffrey.
Yep.
And after his death, set up for a thing of scotch to be delivered and have a note saying, welcome to the club, Jeff.
Yeah.
Because Pierce knew, even in death, that Jeff being 40 is like an event for him. Jeff is going to be
blow
spiraling.
to his ego.
Yeah. Because there's nothing he can do about his age. That's why he's lying about it.
Exactly.
But even then, if you lie about it, it just means you're going to be 44 years later. Like, what can you do? It's inevitable.
Yeah. Actually, I really like that, and it's Jeff having to deal with the inevitability of that.
That's why he has to be separated from reality. And, like, I think of it like Abed's Controllable Christmas, too.
Oh, that's
Except
a good
for
point.
Abed's very aware of it. Jeff, because of his ego, isn't aware of it, and because of his delusional state, because he's not one for it to be like, oh yeah, I'm having my crazy state right now.
I'm having my midlife crisis.
You know, I'm dying right now. My brain is trying to parse through the emotional reaction while my body is literally like fighting to stay alive.
Yeah. I think it's really telling to show like Jeff's psyche, obviously, the way that he sees the rest of his group and that they're integral to his like survival, right? He sees them as his team, and basically just I think that Jeff can sometimes think that he has no harm on the group, right? And then when he sees that it's like, even in not taking care of himself, he can hurt the group because everybody cares about him. I think we all understand what that's like to be a part of a family, and it means being a part of a family means also taking care of myself because the people around me care about me, you know? And so he got so caught up in feeling and worrying and basically going through his midlife crisis that he put his life in danger, and then in the end his whole group was there for him, but you know, he had to really deal with the consequences of like me being so worried and caught up on this, like, took me away from like the only family that I really do have.
Yeah. Season finale, and also another like sort of series finale, like we talked about before. Yeah. So the third season series finale.
Yeah, this is episode 12 and 13 kind of squished together.
Basic story and basic sandwich.
Yeah.
Love the titles. So the Save Greendale committee is discussing how they're actually running out of to-do stars for saving and cleaning up Greendale.
They're doing too good of a job.
They really are. It's impressive. Jeff remarks that it's hard to believe it, but they've actually started turning the school around. There's a really content silence. Everyone's like sighing and they're like feeling proud of themselves, and that just freaks Abed out. He can't stand that. And actually, funny note, the whiteboard in the back of like the background has this really funny thing where it says like last chance for a screen capture, like write your funny comment here, and it has like an opening where you can literally like insert a comment. I think it's like a little thing at like people who notice the background stuff is on the whiteboard behind them. I thought that was really interesting.
That's really cool.
Anyway, Abed's basically freaking out, and he says that someone always has to have a problem. Like that's what they do. Everyone calls him out on that, and you know, he agrees to just be content and you know, be fine with everything that's going on. Yeah, they're basically saying
he's trying to cause problems by letting him not be content.
Exactly. And then the dean makes an accidental announcement and basically just uses it to catch up with everyone, check in with everyone, see how they're doing. He's like, I love you guys. We love you too. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
So the school board guys are back, Carl and Richie.
Yep.
They're definitely drunk or buzzed, and they tell the dean that an insurance appraiser is coming to evaluate Greendale.
Yep.
So the dean's freaking out. Back in the study room, Abed watches all of his friends basically play games on their phones, and he's kind of waiting for a disaster to happen.
Yeah.
Right when the dean bursts in, Save Greendale Committee, unite!
Yes.
He tells them what's happening, and he says if the school isn't appraised good, they're doomed.
Yeah.
And Abed has been waiting for this, so he's like, call to adventure, call to adventure, call to adventure.
Yeah.
Gets everyone involved.
Yeah.
Everyone starts to panic immediately about what to do, and Jeff tries to get everyone to calm down and relax because they've spent the past year fixing Greendale. You know, he's like, what could go wrong? We've spent a year fixing the school. We're going to be fine. And Abed sees this as his moment for hijinks because Greendale is a crazy place where crazy things happen. And he comes up with the plan on the spot that everyone starts to go along with until Jeff interrupts him and asks to talk to Abed outside. So Jeff explains to Abed that there's no story here because if there would, it would mean Greendale is in actual trouble. And you know what that means? No more stories for real.
Yeah.
And Abed kind of agrees to no stories, or at least trying to make it so there's no story. So Jeff is helping Annie clean Dean Pelton's office when they find a wedding ring he was wearing in the pilot episode of the series. And he actually admits that it's his mother's and he wore it because, you know, everyone dreams of settling down one day. And Jeff kind of scoffs at that remark. And then Annie reminds him that he's basically put down roots at Greendale.
Yeah.
And Jeff, as always, denies caring about something and changes the subject. And then we go and we see Abed having a meta breakdown of trying to not be in a story. He's freaking out because he can't handle it. So Dean, Pelton, and the Save Greendale committee meet Ronald Muhammad,
oh my God,
the insurance appraiser, and they begin their tour with him.
Why that name for a white guy?
Ronald Muhammad, it's hilarious.
It's ridiculous.
He's the whitest. So Shirley is telling Jeff not to panic, and he denies that he's worried. And Shirley reminds Jeff that it's okay to embrace how he's really feeling. And, Jeff's like, you've got something in your teeth. Shirley says, you've got something in your chest. One of my favorite. Abed is having another breakdown in the hallway of the school about not being in a story, and he sees himself with a beard telling him to not fight being in a story, so he's like, it's a story, it's not a story. Ronald Muhammad completes his final test with the vending machines at Greendale just in time for Carl and Richie to show up to find out that Greendale has passed and their property actually has value now. Everyone's celebrating. They put Dave Matthews on. Yes. And then Carl and Richie start talking about selling the property. Since there's proof that real estate holds value now, they can sell Greendale to a private sector for a ton of money. Yeah. So they put a stop to Dave Matthews, and everyone's like, reality is shattered. And Abed comes in to let everyone know a story has been averted, only to find out that they basically saved Greendale just for it to get sold.
Yep.
That's very true.
It's like this earth-shattering moment. It's really, really sad. So this school has actually been purchased by Subway and will now become a sandwich university.
Yes! Oh, it's so
Which
great.
Is too much. The return of Subway. Even? Exactly. What is that? What does that even mean?
It is the return of Subway, right?
So the Save Greendale Committee is having their last meeting trying to save the school one more time. Abed suggests buried treasure, funny enough. And they kind of realize that it's hopeless. Jeff makes Annie cry for the last time, as he points out.
That's what he said. Yeah. He's like, at least I'm doing it for the last time.
Yep. And then once they realize they're all out of all of their efforts, or they've exhausted all of their efforts, Chang declares his allegiance to Subway and betrays the group for the last time.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is he? Opens a shirt. Time to get paid.
$5 footlongs. Any.
That's too much.
Oh my god.
He's my favorite.
And then Chang betrays them for the last time and goes crazy yet again.
Exactly. Everything's happening for the last time.
Right.
So a Subway rep is being given a tour by Carl and Richie. He's actually the same Subway rep from season 3 that we saw before. Really cool. And they enter Dean Pelton's office and they find him crying in his underwear.
Nice.
So they leave when Annie and Abed show up to help him pack everything up. Abed notices a photo of famous Greendale computer professor Russell Borchert. And he finds a little scroll hidden behind the picture, and they all read it, and this dust comes up in their face while they open it to read everything that's inside. Then we go to Jeff, who is actually being offered a job by the Subway rep to be their sandwich law professor. Whatever that means.
Bird law.
Nailed it! I love it. So he goes back to the study room to find Britta, and it's actually really nice because we get a flashback to those little whistles that we hear, little theme while he's going into the study room. So Jeff and Britta are talking about their futures and what they're going to do now that Greendale isn't going to be Greendale anymore. And I think it's really interesting because they both mention how they're scared for what Annie and Abed are going to do, but I think that's just so they don't have to talk about how scared they are. Yeah. They're like, no, Annie and Abed, they can't handle it. They're not going to know what to do.
Of course, it turns out they're the most fine by the end. But,
yes, exactly. Because they're too scared to admit that they're scared for themselves. Yeah. So Britta brings up that all this started because Jeff wanted to nail her. And he says he regrets nothing. And Britta says don't. Because, at the end of the day, they realize what did they get done, aside from each other. Jeff straight up proposes to Britta in the study room. Yeah. It's this huge moment. He, gives her all these reasons and she totally agrees. And they decide that they want to have sex on the new study room table because they haven't done it yet.
You gotta break it in.
Exactly. So they're getting ready. They're deciding, medium tempo, high roughness, what number on the scale, all this funny stuff because, Jeff and Britta know each other.
Yeah, because they've been having sex for so long at this point.
For a while. So as they're closing all the doors, they're interrupted by Annie, Abed, and the dean who burst into the study room, and they have announced that they found a buried treasure that can save Greendale. And I think it's really funny because I didn't realize this earlier. When they open up that scroll and that dust comes out, it's cocaine. Because Russell Borchert's his whole thing.
God,
so they're totally high on cocaine, and that's why they're freaking out the way that they're freaking out.
They're literally doing the Running Man buried treasure.
They're like, why? They're excitable. Why are they freaking out that much? Because that was a little bit of cocaine that got in their system.
God. How did I never notice that?
I thought it was awesome. So they're flipping out. They realize that they have this whole plan. They can save Greendale if they go and find this buried treasure. And then we see Chang is spying on them from outside the study room, and he hears all of their plans, and he's wise to what they're going to be doing. And then we get an end tag with Hickey and Professor Duncan, realizing they might be cousins or something because they both have family in Lincolnshire.
Oh my god, that's a really funny one, actually.
That's a hilarious one. Yeah, there you go.
They basically confirmed that.
Yep, it's hilarious. So this one goes straight into the actual season finale basic sandwich. We start right back up again. Annie, Abed, and the Dean are showing Britta and Jeff a video about Russell Borchert, the founder of Greendale.
Yep.
He was attempting to develop a computer that could respond to human emotions when this scandal broke out and his reputation was ruined because they said he had sex with a computer.
Because Borchert loves computers
more than women's butts or hooters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Importante.
Just so you know. So Borchert disappeared along with his fortune as well. Annie shows them the scroll that was written by Greendale's first dean that reveals Borchert's computer lab was locked and sealed away so that no one could ever get to it, and it's beneath Greendale.
Yeah.
Shirley and Hickey come back with some blueprints of the school that shows the sub-basement under the teacher's lounge. Professor Duncan is back to help them as well. They all go to the teacher's lounge, and Hickey smashes through this mural on the wall that they think
X marks the
spot. They think it's that easy.
Literal.
It's these two little tiny X's on this huge wall mural.
Yeah.
Hickey smashes through it just to find a bunch of wires, as Shirley says. So Duncan is like, no, it's got to be a clue. So he goes and grabs the wires and gets electrocuted.
Literally.
And they're trying to figure out if he's okay. And I think Hickey says he smells like burnt aluminum. And Duncan goes, it's pronounced aluminium.
See, he's fine.
He's okay. It's fine. So, they realize this isn't working. Jeff tries to get everyone to admit it's over. He says that he and Britta are getting married. Annie's appalled. The dean says, what does this look like? An hour-long episode of The Office? There's pickaxing and electric zapping. It's like, there's too much serious actual stuff going on here, Jeffrey.
Oh my god, this isn't Pam and Jim, okay?
Exactly. Give me a break. So Annie's like, we're not going to acknowledge this. This is ridiculous. Yep. And Britta's like, what do you call this? What do you call this? What's going on here? And right when she says that, Abed finds a secret trap door.
So, she gets in her face.
Exactly. Booyah. Carl and Richie show up outside of the teacher's lounge with Chang, and they're trying to get in. The group hurries down the secret trap door. They leave Shirley and Hickey with an electrocuted Duncan, and they're all having tea. Yep. Hickey says the tea is swell. They're holding off Chang and the school board guys. So under Greendale in the sub-basement, Annie is kind of lamenting to Abed whether or not Greendale is even worth saving at this point. And Abed explains to her that Jeff and Britta spinning off is a crutch for them because they're scared of what the future holds otherwise. But he reminds Annie that this is their show too, and says the engagement's going to be over by the time they find Borchert's treasure, and they owe it to themselves to do what feels right for them because, not everything's about the decisions other people make. So Abed finds a suspiciously placed jukebox, which ends up being the secret door inside Russell Borchert's secret computer lab.
Because there's literally a song on there that's called Open the
Door by the Secret Doors. So they start playing it. It opens the door. They see his, computer machine lined with gold. And Russell Borchert himself appears, and he's like all scraggly, dirty. He looks homeless because he's been trapped inside this place for decades.
Yep.
And he reveals he locked himself down there when they sealed the room to continue his experiment with enough, food and cocaine to last him 10 years.
But he went through the cocaine in 2 or something like that.
It's very silly. So up above, Chang, Carl, and Richie are trying to get Shirley or Hickey to confess, but neither of them will budge. Richie decides to use his psychic abilities, but all he sees is them using a hang glider to escape to a restaurant across town.
That one is so good. That joke is so great.
He infiltrates their minds.
He's like, I was just in your mind. I stole it.
It's hilarious, and he actually doesn't find out anything, so the subway employees come into the room, and they inform them about the secret trapdoor. Yeah. So back in Borchert's lab, he won't let them take Raquel, his computer, from him. Yeah. And Jeff is telling him that they need the gold, and this project has already cost Borchert decades of his life, and it's given him nothing in return. Annie's really the only one who's empathetic towards Borchert and says that they can't take away his life's work and they have to respect other people's decisions even when they conflict with their own desires. Yeah. And it's another big learning moment for Annie that I really love, and it's kind of like a little winger speech that she gets to give.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So Borchert says that he'll give them all of the cash that he has, which is worth millions, if they leave him alone. And right as they're celebrating...
all you wanted was money. I got that.
I got that. You guys should have just said that in the first place. Right as they're starting to celebrate, Richie, Carl, and Chang appear to ruin the day. They take the money And, the study group, the Save Greendale Committee, accuses Chang of being a bad guy again, to which he replies, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Oh, my God,
And he tries to take off a fake mask on his face that he actually can't take off.
And he's like, wait, I'm not wearing a mask?
I was like, what's the line that he says after that?
Guess I'm just mentally ill then.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's where we're at with Chang. Yep. So they zap Raquel with a magnet and they leave and they trap everyone inside the room with basically no power because Raquel is like the main operating system
and her
for the
whole
lab.
system was fried through that magnet.
Exactly. Yeah. So Borchardt's examining Raquel and notes that her emotional circuitry is still working, and he explains to everyone what he's been doing down in his lab and says that he's been trying to get computers to respond to human emotions. And he also admits to founding Greendale, which he has in writing somewhere that Jeff goes off to find. So Borchardt says he wanted to make a tech-based society where idiots with feelings could thrive. And then Britta shows him a video of a kitten, and they read the comment section where people are talking and communicating with like little emoticons. Exactly. And Borchardt realized idiots won. Mm-hmm. They did it.
Too late.
Yep. His life's work is complete, or his mission down there anyway is done. Jeff comes out. He says he found the deed or found the paper that will save the school, but they still have no way out. So Borchardt suggests that a blast of human passion could power Raquel enough to open the door.
And he's like, but you're going to have to find something more powerful than the feeling I get when I rub my own nipples.
Exactly.
So good luck.
Good luck with that.
Jeff makes everyone turn around, and he hooks himself up to Raquel to the machine. And he has this moment where he looks at, like, each one of his friends down there, and he kind of hears them or hears a moment in his head with each of them. So with the dean, he hears the dean at the beginning of the season saying, "You're here to save me, aren't you?" When he looks at Britta, he hears Britta saying, "Let's get out of here and never look back," which she just said to him when he was like, "Let's get married." When he looks at Abed's little voiceover is, "Jeff, in case you ever have to remember me, can I give you some options for voiceover quotes?"
Shut up, Abed.
Exactly, it's so funny. And then Annie, he just hears the "my lady" and "my lord." And then the doors open and they're able to get out, and the dean looks at Jeff very knowingly. Because Jeff accidentally looks at the dean right after this all happens.
So
and the
right.
dean is like, I know what you did.
I know.
I'm with you. So they're able to interrupt the selling of the school to Subway just before the signing. They state the school's original founder has consultation rights on all future scholastic endeavors, and they introduce the really gross, homeless-looking Russell Borchardt to everyone.
And they're disgusted.
Oh, they're horrified.
Yeah. Very
as they should be. So the Subway rep calls off the deal. He says, Subway is about, good sandwiches and good artistry. They don't want to get involved in all of this. Subway ho!
That's my favorite.
They
leave.
leave.
The world.
Yeah.
And eat fresh.
And eat fresh, exactly. And they do like a whole Thundercats thing. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So they call off the deal, and Carl, one of the school board guys, explodes on them, and he's saying that they didn't save Greendale, because everyone starts to kind of hesitantly celebrate.
Yeah.
He says they moved dirt around Greendale and its grave, and hilariously enough, he says they are still bankrupt, unmarketable, and on the permanent chopping block of anyone who has any say in its future.
I wonder what
just Greendale.
Yeah, just Greendale, yeah. Not like it's about community itself overall.
Yeah.
And the dean replies to that, and he says, it's my favorite thing. Well, around here, we call that Wednesday.
Yeah.
Like, we're used to it. It's totally fine. Everyone starts celebrating to Dave Matthews again. They're all, singing the words. Britta and Jeff call off their engagement because they realize it was kind of nonsense to begin with. Hickey reveals to Shirley that earlier he actually was thinking about a hang glider. Ugh.
So that guy really did get into his mind a little, at least.
Yep. And then Abed and Annie are talking, and Abed's musing to Annie about this past year and what's to come next. And he says they'll definitely be back next year, and if not, it's because an asteroid has destroyed all human civilization. And that's canon. And he looks right at the camera. And Annie's like, what are you looking at? And he's like, nothing. So they have their final meeting where Annie puts a Save Greendale star on their done side of their, to-do list wall. And then we get an end tag with a bunch of new, NBC shows premiering in the summer. A bunch of ridiculous concept shows that aren't going to work.
Stupid,
but they're like, this is all what's coming to you, depending on what fails.
Yep.
Is their whole thing. So it's a big fuck you to NBC.
Yep.
Which is great.
It is great because this is the season finale. We'll talk a little bit more about where this leaves everything in regards to the series, but this is the bow on the end of the story. And like Abed turns straight to the camera and says, if we don't come back, this is what's canon.
This is what's happening.
So much stuff happening in these two episodes. I think that they do explore a lot. They take a lot of time to kind of touch on a few different things that need to be tied up.
I think so.
For me, one of my favorite kind of moments is between Abed and Annie when he's basically helping her cope with the fact that Jeff and Britta are trying to spin off together.
Exactly.
And just knowing and being, and again, just Abed being so aware, and because he's so detached, he can see that this is just their way of like flailing, and instead of dealing with their own problems, they're clinging onto each other and feeding into each other's delusions.
Exactly.
Safe,
holding on to that comfort.
Exactly. And he encourages Annie to not get like sucked up into all of that, because Annie and Abed are bigger than this, you know, and we see it and explore it throughout the rest of the series and where they go with their lives. But, like, I appreciate that that Abed tries to keep Annie grounded in the fact that he's like, I see that you so easily want to get pulled into the whole Jeff narrative, and because and you care about Jeff in a very, like, intricate way that's native to only him. But I really like that Abed is the one to bring her to reality, and he's like, because I understand tropes so well, I can identify it with them, and you don't have to be threatened, which is obviously resolved at the end, where they very clearly never really wanted to get married, and they were both using each other because they care about each other, but using each other because it was so much easier to fall into each other than have to be their own individual
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, I really do love that, and it's very cool to see Abed be there for Annie in a way that she was there for him a couple seasons ago when he was going through all of his stuff as well. So I think that's really cool, and it shows a lot of growth and just a lot of them being there for each other without having Troy around now, because it's like who else do they have to turn to but each other now that they're living together?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so they really lean on each other really strongly.
Yeah, and I think it shows a lot of growth for them, and then not a lot of growth for Jeff and Britta. I think a lot as far as like emotionally for Jeff, because he's like, he cares about his friends now, and he has them turn, their back so they don't know, but like everyone knows that Jeff cares. But yeah, I think they're very much quick to kind of get so scared by Greendale not being around and not having that there for each other, that there for them, that they're like, we're just going to latch onto each other
and they're really
be safe.
Quick to fall into their old ways. Yeah. You're right. And I think we do get some growth though, because then when the opportunity is taken away from them and they realize that they don't have to do this, they're both very much like, oh shit, we were both kind of just, this wasn't 100% authentic, cool, let's drop it. Yep. They're both not too tied to it either, where it's like, we have to see this all the way through. Yeah. How do you feel about this like 2-parter season finale?
I think it's interesting that this story gets a 2-part season finale, because like I'll be honest, like I don't love the buried treasure thing. I feel like they could have done. We had an idea earlier talking about it too, but they could have done something like Russell Borcher could have been in like a cabin somewhere. Like I get that it's like, how funny he's at Greendale, but this is the point where I'm also just like, really? He's at Greendale in his secret lab? Like, I know that this school is ridiculous and the story is ridiculous, but, like, I couldn't latch onto this idea.
Yeah, I get that.
And, like, I know that, like, Annie and Abed were, like, had this, like, weird aversion to, like, Jeff and Britta's relationship, but I've always had the opinion of, like, their relationship is inevitable. Jeff will not be with Annie. And as much as, like the way that Jeff talks about, like, Slater and, like, the woman who I want is the woman who makes me want to be the person I want to be with, I feel like Annie eventually fills that role. But Britta is still, I can be me, that I can give up and not care and do all that. And I think that's really what they both want. I think they both put out an air that they don't care, but they're actually trying really hard and they care so much. I think they would actually enjoy being with a person that is genuinely like themselves at their core. Yeah. And I really feel like we've talked about it. Jeff and Britta are two sides of the same coin, which is passion. And they go really well together. And I think they'll jump into each other. They'll fight, they'll bicker, but they work. They find this comfort and solace in each other that isn't aware in any other relationship in the show. Yeah. That when they go like separate from each other, they drink at the bar by themselves. We see later in the show when we see them go when they're doing the history 101, like with Cornwallis, and it's like, and he was the only one who confided, like, I didn't do my part. Like,
exactly. They always have these little moments. Yeah,
and they're really, really close. So I'm okay with that. Like, I'd be fine with them spinning off or trying to get married, because it feels like it's like, we've been playing with this, and, like, I'm no longer, like, will they, won't they? I'm just kind of, like, it feels right.
Yeah.
I don't care if they do. It's just my opinion is, like, it feels right. And I don't like that Annie is, like, honestly, I don't like that Annie is so concerned. I get that the whole point is that she gets over it in this, and she continues to get over Jeff and that whole relationship dynamic. Because it is still the end of, like, all the Harmon stories. This is the end of, like, Annie, Britta, Jeff, 3-way love triangle thing. It's like it puts a good stop on it, but I don't get why Annie cares at this point.
Yeah,
and that's fine. It's just little nitpicks for me,
and that's fine, because I think at least in my perspective of it, I think it's because it's the why. I'm totally fine with Jeff and Britta ending up together and being together, but like if we're committed to their growth, this is very much them doing it as a convenience thing, and that's why it's something that they so easily throw away once they don't have to do it, you know? So I feel like you in a lot of ways where it's like, the buried treasure thing feels a little bit like a trope for me. It feels a little bit separated from reality.
It's very zany.
It is very zany. Everything else feels a little grounded in reality.
It can make sense.
This is the
one thing where it's like I don't know.
Yeah, where it's like it's
funny.
Too
like,
stretched.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And, like, it's all that. It's just like weird enough in the narrative sense. It feels like it kind of not like fails, but it doesn't land for me.
I think that opinion's totally valid, and for me, maybe it lands, but it feels easier. It's like buried treasure, it being there. I don't know. It just feels a little bit easier, but I think for me, at least in the dynamic of like, why does Annie care about Jeff and Britta being together? She's upset about the why. I know she's obviously still upset about the fact that she's like, she can't be with Jeff and thinks he deserves better. But I also just think it's, again, if we're committed to these characters' growths, it's their growth paths. This is them falling into old habits instead of like addressing the change. That's the thing. Like, I think they're both very much using this as a way to cope instead of having to actually deal with the fact that if Greendale is ending, what does this mean for myself as a person? It's so much easier to latch onto another person and be, I'm in a relationship, I'm a part of a couple, instead of like, I'm Britta Perry, I am my own person, and without Greendale, I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But that's just my opinion. I feel like it's an easy roadmap for people to fall into. We've talked about it before, and people our age getting married and having kids and things like that. Sometimes that feels like the natural path. And I think when not given a place to keep growing themselves and still figuring out those loose ends about themselves that they haven't figured out, they fall into some of their old bad habits. Yeah. You know, with the right person. Again, Britta's been there for Jeff throughout this whole time, and they've had these intimate moments, and like you said, a relationship that's completely specific and special to them. Mm-hmm. But without Greendale giving them a place and a vehicle to keep improving themselves, they sometimes fall into their old habits of like how to cope with.
Yeah.
I just really like how it wraps everything up. It's the season ending where they are pretty sure that they're going to be canceled. They're not going to get brought back. So Dan Harmon has to kind of put a bow on top of all of these stories that he had to restart once again only like 12 episodes ago.
Yeah.
So I think he does a really, really good job at handling all of that and giving everyone the closure that they need and giving everyone growth that seems acceptable and that seems authentic to the characters within this amount of time as they've tried to save Greendale.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, they're successful. They do save Greendale, and it is a good place to kind of stop if this is where it stops. And so I think that's a great place to kind of talk about at the end of season 5. This is where everything is really, really uncertain and up in the air in regards to what's going on behind the scenes, whether it's making a return and coming back. And basically a month after this episode aired, Dan Harmon tweeted out and basically confirmed that they were not coming back and they were not renewed. NBC canceled them. Yep. And it's and obviously that end credit scene that we see is a nod to that. I feel like
that
the final episode,
Carl's whole speech to them too, saying they're bankrupt, unmarketable, and they're still on the permanent chopping block.
Exactly.
We know very much where our show is still at.
Exactly.
And we're going to tell you that through our narrative.
And we're telling you that exactly when we're putting it out there for you, and we're kind of confirming that. And then at the end, where Ovid's like, yeah, this is canon, because they are canceled, and for all intents and purposes,
this was the
end. This is the show ender. And we've talked about it a few times before. It's like, this is the third series finale we get.
It's got to be exhausting.
4 at this point.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that this show has actually had its final page book has been closed for the 3rd time at this point. How?
And then they open up the book and they glue a couple pages in. And then they
exactly. Oh, that's such a good way to put it. It's not even opening a new book. It's reopening the book, adding some pages in. Scrapping them together, and
putting them at
the end. We're gonna add
an
epilogue. I guess it's like 4 more chapters.
Yeah. Let's just throw them in
there. That's a great point.
One more epilogue. Like another 4 months.
Because I think it definitely has an effect on how this season had to start from the way that last season ended with everyone graduating. Yeah. That's why we got a repilot. And then we had everyone grow and become different people from who they were in repilot to the end of this season where they were basically ending for real.
I think that's a perfect point. It's like we not only had to reopen a book that was already closed and tie up loose ends that season left us with, left us wanting, left us questioning, things didn't feel 100% authentic. So it's like not only did they have to reopen it, fix and like retcon a lot of stuff and label it the gas leak year.
Exactly.
But then also take them in such a limited amount of time with still a limited budget time frame, all of this stuff, and control over when they're even airing, and take that and make the most of the time that they have with the characters.
Yep.
And again, wrap them all up again. They had to open the book just to learn how to close it again.
With 13 episodes.
Exactly. And
Such
I think
a limited amount of time.
Ashley and I talked about it a lot in just prepping for this episode. Season 5 is when it really starts to feel like the jokes are wall to wall.
Yeah.
It's back to back to back.
It's very quick.
And the story that they're packing in is quite a lot too, because again, it's like undoing everything from season 4, establishing this as its own new independent season with its own voice.
Exactly.
And then having to wrap it up again because guess what? You weren't able to get legs and make it work, and now...
Yep. And perform the way that we wanted you to perform. When we brought you back
Yep.
to revive your own show,
Yep.
you didn't do what we wanted you to do.
Yep, exactly. And then again, moving you to mid-season, all of these different things that affect how it's received by the audiences.
By the people, yeah.
The day that it was airing, I think we all agreed this was airing on a Friday at this point.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
No one's watched TV on a Friday.
No.
Yeah.
Especially
And-
not the age group this is trying to land in.
Yeah.
And at the time this was coming out there, NBC was pumping a bunch of money into its dramas. I think The Blacklist with James Spader
Oh, God,
was
of course.
coming on, so it was just like such a back burner thing.
Yeah.
And
Still.
obviously they felt it, and that's why they addressed these things in the story.
Oh, exactly. They're not shy about it.
Exactly.
When Dan Harmon comes back, that's where we start getting some of that. There was none of
Yeah.
that in season 4.
Thank
there was
you.
none of that hinting
Where
at
was
the
that
network
bite?
stuff. Yeah, that animosity is back this season for
Yeah.
sure. And I mean, I love it.
Right? It's authentic to the show. It's
Yep.
always been aware of itself.
It's always been a little biting.
It has always been a little biting, and it's always felt like aware of its place in media, and that it's not the most popular kid in school.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's definitely performing with an impairment, and they do the best that they can with it. And I think that's why season 5 stands out, because there are so many good, outstanding episodes
In this
in a
one,
show,
yeah.
in this one, and in a season where it's all uncertain. You know?
Yeah.
Everything's up in the air.
Yeah. How do you feel about season 5 overall?
I feel like it's a really weird situation because it's like we're cleaning up the mess from the last season, but then also I'm setting stuff up for like where these characters will go. But I don't even know if they're going to be able to go that
They're
far.
gonna have, yeah.
So
So
I'm
true.
also preparing for it to end again,
Yep.
but I'm also kind of leaving it open. I'm not really giving you an answer. It's like they saved Greendale. Again, we don't know what
That's
any
about
of
the
the
most
characters
closure
are
that
doing.
we get.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
so right.
no,
So true.
everyone's still going to school for what they plan to. Like, not a lot evolves.
Okay.
And I get that. It's restricted by it has half of the amount of episodes. This is half the amount of airtime
Yeah.
it does to tell the story.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do pack in the jokes, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that it's very entertaining. I appreciate it's really smart. They have the wit and like the
Mhm.
sharpness that came with like
That's
Dan
all
Harmon.
back.
Like honestly, sometimes I feel like season 4 is like watching molasses like drip, because it's just like I get it, and like it's funny. It's still sweet, delicious like molasses. Oh my god,
It's too much.
it does, especially going through the podcast again. It's I feel so bad for those people because they are so aware of it than made season 4, but it feels so different. It's like all of the seasons are bright blue and that one's like bright red, and it's like it can't help but stand
Yeah.
out. Because we come back to it and it's like, oh yeah, this was, if season
This is what
3
we were missing.
continued
Yeah.
to this, I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need 4.
Yeah.
And they acknowledge that. He's like, oh yeah, we didn't need 4. Nothing
Gas
much
the gear.
accomplished
Gas
in
the
4.
gear, yeah.
We didn't talk about it yet, but Dan Harmon had a whole fucking mean Reddit post.
Yeah.
Lots of actual mean Reddit posts about season 4 he's apologized for. And then a huge critical Reddit post where he basically went episode by episode once it was over and said like, this is what I would have done. This like he had a burr in his sides. He was so upset and scorned that his girlfriend
Mhm.
is out with another dude and
Yeah.
he's watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, he said it in the words of like watching my family get raped in front of me.
Yeah.
But I think
Not
that's a
the
little more.
best.
Yeah, again, he's a very volatile person. He's a
Yeah.
great creative force, but he's a firecracker, to say
Yeah.
the least.
And we've all done our research to kind of see that was the consensus.
Yeah.
That that
Definitely.
was the shared feeling on set. And I think you're totally right. With his return, we see this huge return, this creative spark that's back, this voice is back. But you're right, it still leaves a bad taste in our mouth, especially from where we left off season 4. And Stone's right, and I think he was telling me Dan Harmon even like was posting anonymously a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff to basically be able to be as like explicit as he wanted
And talk
to be
as much
Yeah.
shit
and
as he
take-
wanted.
take it down episode by episode. And there were obviously things that he liked. I know Stone was telling me that he was so psyched that they got Brie Larson.
He was jealous of that, and he was like, I was so lucky that I was able to get her again, because that's like something that didn't cross my mind, and the fact that they did it, I was like, I need to.
That's brilliant.
My season one, I need to get her back at least once.
And they're lucky
after
that
this,
they did.
she's too busy. Literally,
right?
After
Yeah,
season 5,
we don't get her in
sorry,
season 6.
Gone.
Yeah,
she's blown up in Hollywood.
She's a star.
Yeah, exactly, because she's Captain Marvel now. But yeah, there's stuff that there were elements from 4 that we liked that I think stayed in very subtle ways.
Yeah.
But overall, we do feel a tonal shift into
Absolutely.
5, and it sets up everything that we see in season 6, which really is the finale for the season.
It actually is. They finally got to their 6 seasons.
They did. They got their 6 seasons. There are a lot of changes structurally, location-wise, just so much different about season 6. But I think season 5 does a really good job at least setting it up. And it's like, if we don't come back, at least we've saved Greendale. We've all taken the step to be better people, more deliberate with our actions, and we're actually trying to make Greendale a better place instead of a place for losers that can get by. We're actually trying to make this a better place for losers to make themselves better.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so true. That's so true. And that's a theme that carries on throughout season 6, which is really, really nice.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a good time as any to thank everybody for, again, sitting with us for another few hours, talking community. We'll be back next week with our 6th and final episode of the Community Cast. So we hope you guys had some fun. We hope you guys will join us next week. And Excelsior, as Dan Harmon tweeted.
Yeah. Very nice.
So goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in, as always.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk to you next week when we return for episode 6.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right.
Peace
Bye,
out.
everyone.
Bye-bye.